Hello, everyone. Welcome to Georgetown Literary Festival 2021. I'm so delighted to be back with you for another year. Before we begin, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Melisa Idris. I am a senior editor with Astrawani News Network, where I host a couple of nightly news shows called Consider This, as also another talk show called The Future's Female. And I am even more delighted to introduce to you our guest. I'm going to be speaking to Marina Mahathir about her most recent venture and adventure, if I may, writing a new book titled The Apple and the Tree: Life as Dr. Mahathir's Daughter. And for the smattering of people who, were living under a rock and may not be familiar with Marina's career, she's not just an author and a columnist, but also, is an HIV/AIDS activist, having served for 12 years as the president of the Malaysian AIDS Council. She's a women's rights advocate. She's long championed for the work of sisters in Islam. And she also started Zavigo, which is an effort towards freedom of mobility for women travelers. Now, in 2019, Marina completed with distinction a master's degree in biography and creative nonfiction from the University of East Anglia in the UK. It is a pleasure to say that she's here with me today. Marina, congratulations on the book. Oh, what an accomplishment.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a trip. It's really been a
It's
trip.
been a trip. Well, you wrote in the book that you had always wanted to study creative writing, that you were yearning to write a book from start to finish. Now that you've done both, the
Yes.
masters and you've got the published book, and I'm just wondering if we could start at the beginning of this book, the conception of this book. When did you begin writing this book? Because as I was reading it, I was wondering, did she write this throughout this pandemic, throughout the lockdown? Where did she find the creative wherewithal to write while everyone was hunkered down for under the MCO?
Well, actually, I guess there was no better time because there was nothing else to do. But actually, I wrote the chapters in the book as individual essays. In fact, one of the chapters was the essay that I wrote when I applied to go to UEA to do my masters. And then when I was there as part of the course, because we had to write something every few weeks, I would write, something or other about, about family, about, my background and all that. And so I had all these bits and pieces. And then when I came home in 2019 and then the lockdown happened, I was a bit worried about losing, just losing touch, I guess, with writing, because nothing was happening. I
Mm.
didn't have a publishing contract or anything. I didn't know what was supposed to happen next. And so I kept on writing. My former classmates at UEA, we started a writing group, and we'd just write pieces and give it
Right.
feedback.
You
And
talked
then
about how you workshopped some of the
yes,
your essays
yes,
in the book. Yeah.
that's part of the course. And I actually did another online memoir writing course last year sometime. And then by chance, the publisher contacted me through a friend and said, would you like to write a book for us? We'd love you to write a book about your life as your father's daughter. And I thought, gee, that's that's exactly kind of what I've been writing. And here there's a publisher. It's not just any publisher too. And so I said yes.
Of
So
course.
that happened about a year ago, and it's a bit fast, I must say, because
Did
I had a few months, that's all, to write it.
it doesn't read like you wrote this in a hurry. It is thoughtful and considered. And I have to wonder, I mean, you said that one of the essays, one of the chapters was the admittance essay for East Anglia. May I ask you which chapter it was?
It's one of the very early ones. It's about living in Alustar, and our house in Jalan Maxwell, which is now Jalan Menteri, and just sort of atmospheric description of our childhood home and what my childhood was like, and that
Those are
got
my
me in.
those my favorite bits, Marina. I have to say
Really.
that the your recollection of your childhood, your friends, your neighbors, the neighborhood, the house that you lived in, all these kind of quintessential rural Malaysian memories were I could really relate to that. It gave me flashes of my own childhood, and I have to say it made wonderful reading. And I wanted to ask you about that because you remember such detail from your childhood, and the process of writing a memoir often comes with the faults of memory. And I was
Yes.
wondering how you got such you documented or you collected such detailed recollection, and how you were able to, I guess, in a way, trust your memory.
Well, it's very interesting. I guess I don't know. When you get older, your long term memory is much stronger than I can't remember what I did last week, but I can tell you what I did when I was 10. It's just, I guess it was such a great childhood, in that house with a big garden that we used to play in, and that whole neighborhood. It was idyllic in many, many ways. So I guess it sticks in your mind. And so I just wrote it as I remembered it. Whether my brothers remember it in the same way, I don't know. They
Mm.
haven't read it, so I don't know. They might dispute some things.
Oh, they
Uh,
haven't read it. Oh, they haven't read it. Oh,
no,
this
no,
is quite
no.
interesting.
Yeah, you've read it before any of my family, actually, tell you the
Okay,
truth.
what about Dr. Mahathir? What about your father? Has he read the finished manuscript?
No. No. I don't know. I just sort of worried about letting them read it. I just wanted to write this whole thing and get it out there. And then when I announced it, I said I have a book coming out. It's a memoir, and I announced it on our family chat. There was utter silence. And I don't know whether it was shock or worrier. And then I said, "Don't worry, I'm the star of this book. You all are just bit players, so don't worry about it." So,
Although I have to say there was some I as I was reading, I wondered whether Mokzani might be a bit aggrieved that you did mention that he slipped on his
yes.
own pee and fell and broke his arm or broke his leg or something like that.
Well,
That was quite
that
a
was true.
charming anecdote.
That was true. What to do?
Okay, well, on that note, Marina, about truth telling, particularly in memoirs. I mean, with memoirs, so much is meant to be confessional. So much is about your lived experience, your own. As you said, you're the star, right? It's your memories. I was wondering whether there was any inner struggle about wanting to kind of put it all out there versus maintaining silence about some things.
Yeah, it was a bit of struggle because that you have to choose what you want to talk about. So I just decided to write about things that, I don't know, the larger things, I guess, that happen. And I was very clear. The publisher was very good because I asked her, so who is the main character in this book? And she said, you. And that helped a lot because then I don't really have to deal with anyone else's thoughts
Mm.
about it. I didn't have to go and interview the rest of my family and say, what did you think about this incident? It was all from my perspective. And so I just made these choices about what I wanted to write. And let me tell you, even when I finished it, and still today, I keep thinking, oh, I should have put that in, I should have put that in. But that you just have to make a choice. Otherwise you're writing, the size of War and Peace, which
Mm.
I don't think anyone has the time to read. And it's difficult. Memory is difficult, and you kind of have to interrogate yourself many times to see whether you really remember things that way or not. And
Mm.
once I was clear about those memories, then I put it in.
Yeah, I like that you said that, because I think with memoir writing, it really is about, not just truth telling, but also kind of confronting our own vanities and the stories and perhaps the lies we tell ourselves, and digging deep into finding out how it shaped us as a person. You talked a lot about finding your own opinion, your authentic self. If I may quote the book, Marina, that kitchen incident that you wrote
Yes.
about when you were younger, you said there, to quote you, were they my own opinions, or was I just parroting what I had heard my father say? Every time I offered opinion in class or in conversations with classmates on almost anything that involved politics or world affairs, a little voice inside me said, "Is that really your opinion, Marina? Or did you just regurgitate what you heard dad say?" End quote.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's a journey of self discovery, which you kind of laid out in your book for us. Was that very difficult to kind of find your authentic voice as an author, as a writer?
Yes, definitely. Because I remember clearly, that incident stuck in my mind so much. It's funny. I asked my best friend, who I mentioned in there, Jill, about that incident, and she remembers nothing, nothing of it. Even though I came into her room crying, but it was so distinct for me because it was a kind of a pivotal moment for me. When I started to think, what do I think about anything? Who am I? I think I call myself a, what do you call it? A radio, where I just sort of pick up
A radio
radio waves
scanner.
every,
Yeah,
a
yeah.
radio scanner,
The
and,
scanner,
and
yeah.
yeah, and just spurted out whatever it picked up, without really thinking whether that was what I thought. And then I guess after that, I began to take more responsibility for what I said or what I thought. And, I had to do a bit more work in figuring that out, because it was too easy to just sort of, pick bits and pieces and say things, and sound as if I know anything. But in fact, I didn't. So, yeah, that really was, I guess, the beginning. It still took a long time for me to really find my own voice. But I think that moment really started me on that road.
Well, it was, you also touch a lot on, if I may, imposter syndrome. I have
Yes.
to say, Marina, I really resonated whenever you wrote about it. And it was kind of this reoccurring theme throughout, this thread throughout your book about, um, as you write, your this the feeling of not being quite up to mark, of not being um, qualified to be where you are, despite your all your experiences and your achievements. And you said that perhaps this is the legacy of living under so large a shadow as dad's.
Yes.
How did that feel, coming to terms with that? Was that a feeling that you had always had throughout life, or putting that down in writing, putting that down pen to paper? Was that a difficult truth that you had to acknowledge?
Yeah, I guess, and I was very conscious that, dad might read this and he might be shocked, because I'm not sure that he himself was conscious of me feeling like that,
Mm,
um and later on, I guess it made me, I'm not sure always consciously, decide to go my own route, so that I could come out of that shadow. I wasn't trying to be, a clone, or, so yeah, it was tough, and I still feel that way, not just in relation to dad, but to a lot of people whom I admire, who I think are so clever and so knowledgeable, and things like that, I always feel like I don't know anything, I don't know enough. um and I think in some ways, after all these years, I'm kind of downplaying myself as well, not consciously, not to be falsely humble or anything, but because, I remember once someone asking me when I was doing AIDS work, like, what is the connection between HIV/AIDS and the environment? And I said, well, I don't know much about the environment. And then I started going on about dams and how it, you know dislodged people, and how that made the women vulnerable, and that's how they got HIV. And I thought, what am I doing? I'm answering this question which I thought I didn't know how to answer. And I was like, God, I got to be nicer to myself. I shouldn't be so hard on myself.
Well, that is true, but I found, what I really respect about that was you did a lot of, I guess, self-reflection and you know bravery in your vulnerability by laying it all out in the book. You talked about the fear of being seen as mediocre, and
Yeah.
that one, I guess, exchange you had with your father, with Dr. Mahathir, about um, being mediocre, and
Right.
that was it struck me so much because, again, the bravery that it took to kind of show up in that vulnerability. Was that uncomfortable for you to write, um, particularly as you said you're not quite sure how, after your father will read this, how he might respond to realizing your struggles with some of his actions.
Yeah, I think he will be very surprised by it. But again, it was one of those moments, when I remember so clearly to this day. And I guess it was really important to the way I viewed myself, just that word, that being mediocre wasn't good enough, and so I had to do better. And it was a label that I didn't want hung on myself. And so it's been a constant struggle, to overcome that, and to just, if not to be, super duper excellent, but at least a notch above mediocre, add something, anything. Even knitting, I don't know.
Well, it could be writing now, right? It could be memoir writing. can I
I
can I
hope
ask?
I hope so. I mean, I really hope that, you know people will look at the book, and think about the writing as well as the content.
Hmm.
That somehow I think my style has changed somewhat, from before I went for the course. So
In what
I'm
way?
hoping that shows. Well, I wrote that column in the Star for, I don't know, I can't count,
Many
at
years.
least 25, at least
Many, many
25
years.
years. It's a bit shocking to say, because there are people who are younger than that. But I was so used to writing, 1,000 words, so everything had to be precise and da da da, to the point, straight away. And when I went on the course, I learned to take my time and kind of elongate, to describe things better, to give a better sense of the atmosphere, the feeling, the environment, and things like that. So I do think, because my husband tells me that my column since I came back has changed somewhat. It's moved towards that, although I still had to keep it short. But I really enjoyed learning how to write like that. Creative nonfiction, to tell a story in a different way, rather than to the sort of fact base, da 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 da, and then this happened, and then that happened, and then that happened. Just to sort of weave more around it, to give a better picture of what I as a little girl thought, or I as a teenager thought, and what people around me thought, that sort of thing.
I
Yeah.
could definitely picture you growing up in Kedah. I could picture the house the Pondok Maharizan. Is that correct? You know, it's
Yes,
not
yes,
there. So I could
yes,
picture it. You know, the almost Jetson-like house in the
yes,
70s.
yes. Yeah. It just
Oh,
in the 70s it seemed very advanced, but it wasn't really.
what did you hope to achieve with this book? I mean, again, you know, it was about, as you said, it took some time. It was about kind of going back and digging deep. But having now published this book and put it out there, what was it? What do you hope to get out of this, or for it to achieve in some way?
Well, personally, it was really to get it out my system. I think I really wanted to see if I could write a long form book, but I definitely did not intend it to be a hagiography of anything, least of all of my dad. I'm not here to explain. I mean, there are already, if you look at my Facebook, there are already people making judgments about the book before they've even read it.
Mm,
Like they think, oh, must be praising him sky high and all that. And I just wanted to show, um, that everybody is human, and there are all sorts of human things around families and things like that. It's not to, I don't think I need to do any justification for my dad at all.
right.
That's He doesn't need that from me. But it's just my perception of things and how things happened, um, and how I felt, or how my family felt, my mom,
Mm,
that sort of thing. So to bring it down to a very, very personal level, and I don't know. I don't know how people are going to react, because I think that they're not, in Malaysia at least, they're not really very used to memoirs like this,
maybe,
which is
yeah.
very, very personal and almost confessional, I guess. Yeah.
I can only tell you how I received it, and one of the things that I took away from having read your book, Marina, was again that really apt title of the apple and the tree, and you know, not being a carbon copy of your father, but being close enough to see some of the similarities, but also knowing that we are not our parents, that we can
Yeah.
love them and be loyal to them and disagree with some of the things they do and say, but they are their own person as we are our own. And that was what I took away from your book, how much of
Great.
your own person you are, yet you know, knowing that much of yourself comes from your father. And I really quite liked how you did not feel the obligation to need to protect him in this book. It was very kind of raw the way you described having to make an appointment to call him, to have him call
Yeah,
you
yeah,
back.
exactly.
And
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
I thought that was quite revealing, you know, that there was no preferences or special treatment, even as his daughter when he was in the office, when he was working. So
Right.
that was what I took away, and I thought that analogy of apple and tree was really quite wonderful. You also used the train analogy. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, the trains on the track.
Well, I thought about that many times, because I've already talked about apple in the tree, and then suddenly I'm talking about trains. But I sometimes felt that, my dad and I, we were trains, chugging along our own tracks, and occasionally meeting at the same stations, but basically, going off in our own directions. That was what I was trying to convey. And of course, his is like a, I don't know, a Shinkansen or something, and mine is just a steam engine chugging
you
along.
you said yours is a little KTM one, and
Yeah,
his was
yeah,
like the Orient Express.
yes, yes, so that's, I just wanted to convey that difference, but that, trains do often meet at the same station occasionally, and that's the way we are. Sometimes we meet and sometimes we don't, and in terms of what we think about, etc. And it's not a particularly unusual thing,
Mm.
really.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you learn anything new about your dad as you were writing the book, or not just your dad, but the dynamic of your relationship? Did you learn as you were kind of writing this book? Did you have any epiphanies or breakthroughs, as they call in therapy, about the way this dynamic has worked over the years?
um I don't know whether I can say I learn anything new, because I was just putting down the way I saw the whole relationship.
Mm,
um and I you know I think the rest of my family is gonna be more surprised by it than anything. um that's the way it is. But like I said, like towards the end, I mean, of course we had the, you know some difficulties, differences of opinion along the way. But I guess as I got older and he got older, we're somehow merging in some ways in the later years. I mean, it's still not 100%. There's
mm,
still areas which where we differ, but I think in the last few years, we've sort of had the same goals and thing for the country. So we've kind of been on the same page more
right.
in the recent years, which is nice, which is really nice. It's much less exhausting than
It's coming to peace
than
with your differences.
disagreeing. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Definitely, definitely better that way. And we've got a couple of minutes left. I just wanted to run a couple more questions by you, particularly what I thought was quite interesting. The the way some of the people were portrayed, or those who don't come across so well in the book, through your eyes.
Yes,
Peja, I'm
yes,
thinking of Faisal Azumu, at Harun, another. Are I mean, these are kind of your opinions that you've put in the book, but are you concerned, or did you consider perhaps, that that you are in control of this narrative, that they may not
yes.
come across so well in the book? Was that a concern?
Um, Not really, because I mean, all the things I said were as they happen. I mean, these are actual incidences, and if they reflect how the other person is, I think it's up to the reader to judge it. But I'm saying that this is how things happen, and I'm not making it up, because I very often have the backup for it. um and I don't even think that they can argue with it.
Right.
um so it's not, I don't think I'm saying things which are untrue, or making judgments. I'm just saying this person wasn't there, and then he came late, and he was very, very, hyper. And later on I found out why. And
Okay.
so you can draw whatever conclusion you want from that. Or this person said this, and then I asked a question and he wouldn't answer, and that's it. And all this is true. So I think, well, I'm sure they still won't like it. I'm quite sure they won't, and they might say it's fiction rather than non-fiction. But, well, they can write their own book. Then they can, I think we all, can say what we want, and then if they disagree, then they can write their own, description of whatever happened. I
They
think.
should get their own book published. Then they
Oh
can write
yeah,
what.
absolutely. Go ahead. Go
Right.
ahead, and we can read all the different versions and make up our own minds of which one is correct.
And speaking of that, the last few chapters were about the 22 months that Pakatan Harapan was in power, and that change of government. And you talked, I think it ended on this kind of look ahead, but I wasn't quite sure how you felt about that. Are you hopeful about the future? I mean, we've talked. The memoir was about documenting the past through your eyes, documenting that period through your perspective. But when you look ahead to what you think about the country and where you see us going, um, are you of a hopeful spirit, or is that one of more pessimism and dejection?
Well, I stopped the book pretty much in February 2020, right? Um, and I didn't go further than that. But um, it's very hard to say at the moment. I'm generally a hopeful, optimistic person. Because I think that's the only way to live. Otherwise, you might as well crawl under the sheets and stay there. And I do see pockets of hope, especially with young people and the way they think. But there's a lot that is despairing, for our democracy, because of the way things have turned out. I mean, you can't doubt this fact. We have a government that we did not vote for. It's as simple as that, and that's very basic, right? We should have a government that we vote for, and so it brings up a lot of questions of what the future holds for Malaysia, whether this is something that is going to continually happen, or are we going to go back to a time, to a system where it's very clear that the people get what they want. So at the moment, it's I guess kind of frustrating, and I'm sure I'm not the only person who feels that way. uh Plus, on top of that, of course, we've had the pandemic. I mean, it's
Mm.
it's really been an incredible period where we've had
Compounded.
I know all these things have come together at the same time. And it does make you wonder whether, I mean, the pandemic, I guess we could not have avoided it. It would have come somehow, but whether, if we had, you know stayed the course and had the government we voted for, whether things would have been different, or what, it's very hard to really know. And
Mm.
I wouldn't want to say that, oh, they'd be brilliant, and we would have gotten out of it in 3 months. Who knows? But at the moment, it just seems like so many things piled on top of each other. But I like to think that we will get out of this somehow. We will get out of the pandemic. We will get out of this economic funk, and we will get out of this democratic funk at some moment, that people will eventually come to their senses. But Malaysians, they'll kind of, they'll talk, like yak 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 all the time. But ultimately, they'll also keep things very close to their heart, and they'll make it known at the right time, as we've seen it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I cling to that hope. I cling to that hope. I cling to our young people. I've just met some bright young sparks that I feel, can take us somewhere. So yeah, I do feel hopeful.
Okay, okay. I'm glad, because then on that note, I can say that we've come to the end of our chat, and it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. And I really want to congratulate you on putting this book out and writing this, putting those thoughts and the vulnerability on paper. Congratulations on having it published.
Thank you so much.
And thanks to everyone who's listening today. And thank you to the GTLF team for having us as part of your Georgetown Literary Festival once again this year. If you're interested to listen to the other sessions, you can go to the GTLF 2021 Spotify page, and there's all the other sessions there as well. So thank you so much, Marina, for this chat, and everyone for listening. Till next time, folks. Bye.